Hello, I'm Sebastian. Welcome to 9 Nar Trees podcast. Today, I will summarize and review the book. The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki explores a counterintuitive idea. Under the right conditions, groups of ordinary people can make decisions and predictions that are as good as or better than those made by experts. Drawing on examples from economics, psychology, politics, and everyday life, Surowiecki examines why collective judgment sometimes works remarkably well and why it sometimes fails spectacularly. Rather than celebrating crowds as inherently smart, the book emphasizes the specific ingredients that allow group intelligence to emerge, such as diversity of viewpoints, independence of thought, decentralization, and effective ways to aggregate opinions. It also investigates how social pressures, information cascades, and overconfidence can push groups toward poor outcomes. Written for general readers and decision-makers alike, the book provides a practical framework for thinking about markets, organizations, and institutions where many minds contribute to one choice. I will give you key takeaways from this book. Firstly, the core conditions that make groups intelligent. A central theme of the book is that crowds are not automatically wise. Group intelligence emerges when several conditions are present. Diversity matters because people bring different information, experiences, and problem-solving approaches. Even if many individuals are only moderately informed, variation in their perspectives can cancel out individual errors and reveal patterns a homogeneous group might miss. Independence is equally important, since people must form judgments without being overly influenced by what others think. When opinions become correlated through social pressure or imitation, the group loses the error-canceling benefit that makes aggregation powerful. Decentralization also plays a role. Decisions improve when knowledge is drawn from many local sources rather than forced through a single controlling viewpoint. Finally, there must be a workable method of aggregation, such as voting rules, market prices, prediction mechanisms, or structured scoring systems, to transform many individual inputs into one decision. Surowiecki uses these conditions to explain why some systems, like well-designed markets or broadly representative elections, can outperform small committees, while other systems fail when one or more conditions break down. Secondly, why markets can be effective information processors. The book highlights how certain markets can act as large-scale devices for collecting and synthesizing dispersed information. In a functioning market, prices can reflect a blend of countless judgments about value, risk, and future expectations, even though no single participant sees the full picture. This does not mean markets are always correct or morally good, but it does suggest that market signals can be surprisingly informative when participation is broad, incentives are aligned, and manipulation is limited. Surowiecki connects this idea to real-world decision-making, where leaders often need a summary of complex, scattered knowledge. He contrasts situations where markets aggregate independent assessments with situations where participants chase trends, react to rumors, or share the same assumptions. Those dynamics can produce bubbles, panics, and sharp mispricings. A key takeaway is that market wisdom depends on the same underlying conditions as crowd wisdom: diversity of beliefs, independence, and mechanisms that convert many micro-judgments into a usable macro signal. Readers are encouraged to treat prices and forecasts as data points rather than certainties, and to ask what incentives and information flows produce them. Thirdly, group decision-making in organizations and small teams. Surowiecki applies crowd principles to companies, committees, and everyday workplace decisions. Many organizations default to hierarchical judgment, assuming that the most senior or most credentialed people will be right most often. The book challenges that assumption by showing how structured group input can outperform top-down decision-making, especially in uncertain environments where no one has complete information. However, small groups have special vulnerabilities. They can be dominated by confident voices, skewed by status dynamics, or steered toward quick consensus instead of accurate analysis. The book emphasizes that good organizational design is less about assembling brilliant individuals and more about building processes that protect independence and surface distributed knowledge. This can include anonymous forecasting, separating idea generation from evaluation, using clear criteria, and creating mechanisms for aggregating judgments rather than debating until the loudest view wins. Another insight is that decentralization can be a strength when it is paired with shared goals and feedback loops. When teams and units can act on local information and the organization learns from outcomes, collective performance can improve without requiring perfect central planning. Fourthly, how and why crowds go wrong. The book spends significant time on the failure modes of collective judgment, showing that bad group outcomes are often predictable consequences of social influence. When people watch one another too closely, they may copy early movers rather than rely on their own information. This creates information cascades in which a belief spreads because it is popular, not because it is correct. Social proof and reputational concerns can also push individuals to hide doubts, leading to herding behavior and fragile consensus. Another failure pattern is polarization, where group discussion drives members toward more extreme positions than they held initially, especially when the group is like-minded. Overconfidence can amplify these problems. Groups may feel more certain after deliberation, even when the evidence is weak. Surowiecki argues that these failures are not inevitable, but are strongly shaped by environment and structure. Systems that reward conformity or punish dissent tend to undermine wisdom. In contrast, systems that preserve independence, encourage disagreement, and maintain a broad mix of viewpoints are more likely to correct errors. The practical lesson is to focus less on making groups talk more and more on designing conditions that keep their judgments varied, honest, and aggregable. Lastly, practical methods for aggregating opinions and predictions. A recurring question in the book is how to turn many individual judgments into a single decision that a leader or institution can act on. Aggregation is not just counting votes, the method shapes the outcome. Surowiecki explores mechanisms such as voting systems, averaging independent estimates, and market-like tools that let participants express confidence and update views. The value of these approaches lies in their ability to collect small pieces of information from many people, including those who may not speak up in meetings. Prediction-oriented mechanisms can be especially useful in organizations because they create a measurable track record and reduce reliance on persuasive storytelling. The book also implies that aggregation works best when inputs are elicited carefully, questions should be clearly defined, participants should be motivated to be accurate, and the process should limit contamination from groupthink. Readers can apply these ideas in everyday settings, from deciding which projects to fund to estimating timelines by using anonymous surveys, independent scoring, and simple statistical combinations rather than forced consensus. The broader message is that better outcomes often come from better processes, not from finding a single perfect judge. In conclusion, this book suits readers who make decisions with or for groups, including managers, entrepreneurs, policy-minded readers, analysts, educators, and anyone curious about how collective behavior shapes outcomes. It is also valuable for people who regularly rely on public signals such as polls, rankings, and market prices and want a clearer way to judge when those signals are informative. The main life benefit is a stronger decision-making toolkit. You learn to separate situations where group input can genuinely improve accuracy from situations where social influence will distort judgment. That perspective can help you run meetings better, build smarter feedback systems, and avoid being pulled into herding dynamics in investing, workplace choices, or community decisions. Compared with many popular books that either glorify the crowd or warn against it, Surowiecki offers a balanced framework grounded in real mechanisms and practical conditions. The emphasis on diversity, independence, and aggregation gives you criteria you can apply immediately, not just inspiring stories. For buyers choosing among decision and behavioral economics titles, this one stands out for connecting theory to concrete organizational and institutional design choices that readers can adapt to their own context. If you would like to support James Surowiecki, you can buy the book through the Amazon link I've provided in the podcast description. After reading the book, please let me know what you think and share your thoughts. See you around.